Okay, we are ready to continue Echo in Chapter 8. Even though the sun bloomed warm and bright on Saturday afternoon, Ivy still wore Fernando's jacket and the purple hat from Maricelli. She had written to both of them last night, telling all about the house and her own room, the Yamamotos, and the Wards. When she reached the dirt road that divided the two properties, Ivy saw Susan waving from the long wooden wagon nestled between two rows of trees across the way. She raced over. "Hi," she said, climbing up and sitting on the bench across from Susan. "What's this wagon for?" "A long time ago, my grandpa used to hitch horses to it and haul stuff around the farm, but now it's just for playing. My dad built the benches." Ivy pointed to three names carved into the inside planks of the wagon. "Donald, Tom, Kenny." "Did your brothers carve those?" Susan nodded. "They used to carry orange crates up here and build forts. And when they played hide and seek in the grove, the wagon was home base." "Who's Kenny?" "Kenneth Yamamoto," said Susan. "We always called him Kenny." She stood and pointed across the fields to the yellow house in the distance. "From here you can see the roofs of all three houses, yours, mine, and the Yamamotos. It's a triangle. Kenny was Donald's best friend his whole entire life. He's the one who talked Donald into joining the Marines. My dad didn't like that one bit because he is U.S. Army through and through, and he wanted his sons to choose Army. Then Donald, he died in the bombs at Pearl Harbor." Ivy felt her stomach sink. She ran her finger over his name in the wood. "That's why you have the flag with the gold star in your window?" Susan nodded. "My mom and some other ladies sewed them on their sewing machines for remembering. My mom is making one for your house for your brother. I hope he doesn't die." Ivy shuddered. Even though it wasn't cold and she was wearing Fernando's jacket, she felt goosebumps on her arms. She knew when Fernando went to war that it was dangerous, but the danger seemed so far away. "I hope he doesn't die too." She took a deep breath. "Did Kenny Yamamoto get hurt in the bombs?" Susan leaned closer. "No, and my dad says it's no miracle he escaped because he probably knew about the bombing in advance. He thinks Kenny should be locked up with the rest of the Japanese. He says if Donald hadn't listened to that Jap spy, he'd be alive today." Ivy felt her body stiffen. "Spy?" Susan's eyes widened and she nodded. "My dad says that for all he knows, Kenny is just pretending to be a loyal American so he can get information and give it back to the Japanese. The whole family could be spies. He thinks the Yamamotos are hiding something, and if they are and he can prove it, they'll be sent to prison and their farm will be taken by the bank and sold." Okay, so on your paper, your one question says, what does Mr. Ward blame Kenny for? And why does he blame him? Okay, so go back. What happened? He's blaming Kenny for Donald's death, right? And then why? Why does he blame him? Okay, how would he prove it? By inspecting their house inside and out. Ivy's feelings tangled. She didn't even know the Yamamotos, but after being at their sad house and seeing their neglected yard and knowing where they were now, she felt protective of them. Besides, they weren't they already in a kind of prison? She sat up straighter. "My dad wouldn't work for spies, so I'm sure they're not, and he doesn't like the word Jap. Someone wrote it on their house, but we're going to paint over it." Susan went on. "My dad knows these things because he used to be in Army intelligence, and now he's in charge of the CSO. They're always having meetings. He says every American must keep an eye out for suspicious activity and report it to the police. Even children. It's our duty. Have you seen anything suspicious over there?" "Suspicious like what?" "I don't know. Secret documents. Anything that could help the Japanese, win the war." Ivy shrugged. "I haven't been in the house, only the shed, but it was just gardening things." "If you do go inside the house, Be careful, because it might be booby-trapped or rigged with bombs to protect their spy stuff. There could even be secret passageways. My dad says their type is capable of anything." Ivy shook her head and raised her eyebrows. Did Susan believe all the things she was saying? Susan shrugged. "It might be true." Her shoulders dropped a little and she chewed on her lip. "I used to play with Kenny's sisters, Karen and Annie, all the time." She gazed in the direction of the Yamamoto house. "Their mom was my piano teacher. But that all ended after Donald." Her eyes shifted to the harmonica in her hand. "Can you teach me?" Ivy was more than happy to leave the spy talk behind. She didn't like worrying about what might become of the Yamamotos if they were sent to prison, or what would become of her family if the bank sold their farm. It was enough to worry about Fernando. Okay, so how is Susan's dad influencing her thinking about the Yamamotos? And how does Ivy feel about the accusations? Okay, Susan used the word Japs. That shows influence. She's talking about spies and even considering it. But what does Ivy think about all this? She went through the first pages of Harmonica Playing Made Easy, just as Miss Delgado had done, explaining the tabs to Susan. It's simple. There are 10 holes on the harmonica. Starting with the lowest note, each hole matches a number between 1 and 10. You look at the words of the song and the numbers above them. A regular number means blow into the hole for that note. A minus sign in front of a number means draw your breath or inhale for that note. She taught Susan Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star and listened to her play it all the way through on her own. "You catch on really fast. You're good at music." Susan gave Ivy a weak smile. "At least I'm good at something." She lay back on the bench and gazed up at the sky. "I know what you mean," said Ivy, doing the same. "My brother Fernando is good at everything. He can take apart anything and put it back together again, even a sewing machine. Now he's finished his training and will be sent to the fighting. It's all Mama and Papa talk about." "It's all anyone talks about," said Susan. "Hey, why do you wear that jacket and that hat all the time?" "The jacket is Fernando's. He loaned it to me while he's in the war. He wants me to know that he's still looking out for me. You know, keeping me warm and safe, even from far away. The hat is from my best friend Araceli. Her mother made us matching ones. We look so much alike people thought we were sisters." Ivy's words just kept coming, and Susan seemed so eager to listen that Ivy found herself telling all about Miss Delgado and the radio show, and how sad she'd been to leave Fresno, and how far ahead she was in the reading and math books. "I used to be ahead in my class too," said Susan, "but I got behind. I don't know why. Before, my parents always helped me with my homework. Now they're just too tired all the time. And sad." Ivy tried to imagine her own family's life without Fernando and how it would take them apart. If the worst happened, she wasn't sure she'd be able to keep her promise to him and hold them together. Her heart felt heavy just imagining it. "I'll help you with your homework." Susan sat up and looked at her with disbelief. "You will?" "Sure," said Ivy. "We'll be doing the same assignments, right? You don't even have to tell anyone. It can be our secret." Susan's eyes welled up and she swiped at them. "Thanks, Ivy. You know, I'm glad you moved here. I don't really have friends." Ivy rolled on her side, propping her head up with her hand. It was hard to believe that Susan, who had so much, didn't have friends. "Why?" "I'm not allowed. I can't invite anyone over, and I can never, ever go to someone else's house unless my mom is with me. It's okay for you to come to my house because your mom works for us, and if my dad asked what you were doing there, my mom would say Mrs. Lopez didn't have anyone to watch you while she worked. My mom, she makes it so it's okay." Ivy was puzzled. "But we're together right now." "I'm still on our property, at arm's length. I play here all the time by myself. See, my mom says my dad is worried sick about losing another child, especially with Tom fighting somewhere in Europe. I don't know what would happen to us if Tom didn't come home safely. especially after Donald. She whispered, "Sometimes my dad still cries about Donald." Ivy didn't know what to say. It was all so sad, and yet she couldn't imagine the stone-faced Mr. Ward crying. Susan looked down at her harmonica and frowned. "It was a telegram, you know. That's how we found out about Donald." Ivy sat up, reached over, and squeezed Susan's hand. They stayed that way for a few moments, lost in their own thoughts, the only sounds the birds chirping from nearby trees. In the distance, a clanging interrupted the quiet. "That's my mom ringing the back porch bell. I have to get home, right home." Susan climbed down from the wagon. "I'll see you on Monday morning." "The bus picks me up first. Remember, I'll save you a seat if you want me to." Ivy nodded. "Yes, please." Susan kept talking as she inched backward toward the grove. "Want to start meeting here on Saturdays?" "I can't next Saturday because I'm going to my grandma's for Christmas, but I can after I get back. It could be our place now instead of belonging to the boys." "Sure," said Ivy. "Cross your heart?" Ivy smiled and wrinkled her forehead. "Why do you always make me promise?" Susan shrugged. "I guess because sometimes people say you'll see them again, and then you don't." Ivy looked at the names carved in the wagon and understood. She made an X over her chest with her finger. "Cross my heart." Okay, now look at your last question. What may be the cause of Susan falling behind in school? So she talked about how her parents were so upset about her brothers, especially Donald, and how they weren't helping her as much. So put that in a good sentence, okay? Now, I want you to do, we haven't done any predicting for a while, so I want you to give me a little bit of predicting. In every story, we've had a little bit of a problem occur. Knowing what you know right now, what problem do you think maybe Ivy or her family's going to face? Do you think that something's going to happen between her and Susan? Do you think that something's going to happen with the Yamamotos? Give me some ideas, a little bit of prediction of something that you might think is coming. All right.